So are you going to do a featured image layout? Are you going to do a hero layout? Are you going to do more of an F pattern? There are so many different types of layouts, and I'll put some of my favorite layouts in the blog below, in the description, and that way you can kind of see what I feel like are some of the best layouts for business in particular. But that's an important question, and one that I think that should definitely be asked and talked about, because there are so many different ways you can go about it. And you definitely will have to test, because testing is the name of the game, especially these days, especially with the changing times. But this is another important one that should definitely be a part of your website design. Mobile friendliness. Did you know that 50% now, I think that was actually back in 2016. It's grown a little bit since then, but 50% of all traffic is now mobile. And what I see with a lot of businesses, even bigger businesses, is that they totally do not optimize for mobile. And it may be responsive, right? So responsive is just because you may or may not have heard that term before, but responsive design basically is the design that can fluctuate between between devices. So whether you have an iPhone or an iPad or just desktop, it fluctuates. But that's still, just because it has a responsive design does not mean that it is still as optimized as best as it can for mobile. Even a different software within WordPress, it still needs to be, hand touched and fine tuned for mobile. I mean, there's many different things that can go part of it. But especially if you're not a designer, a web designer, or webmaster, you still need to be aware that mobile friendly is super powerful, and it's only going to be more and more important. So please be aware of that. White space, negative space, the actual spacing on your website. So see, white space helps when it's used correctly, it can be extremely powerful on your website. And it can help your eyes breathe. I'm sure you've been on some websites where it's like add, or and just clutter and just all this crazy stuff, that's going on, and it's like I gotta get off. It's like too much, and I know everyone's seen that. And it can also be overused, where it's like I don't even know what this site's about. So there's a balance. There's equalization that needs to happen with the white space. But think about it. If you've ever seen Apple, right, or if you've ever gotten an iPhone, and that beautiful white box, and it's like, Jesus, this is absolutely gorgeous. You almost don't want to throw away the box because it's so cool looking. And it makes you feel like this, okay, what's in this box is extremely important. And that's how you should definitely see your website, and whether that's white space or negative space. And negative space is just basically the space, regardless of color, that you actually use between images or text or video. So use it strategically. And it kind of reminds me of when great orators use silence to help make things unforgettable. Call to action. It's super important. It should be used religiously and consistently on all pages. And one thing we love to do is the fear of missing out, and kind of dovetailing into call to action. And there's different types of call to action, such as call now, or using a form to fill out the information to get their email, right? So usually it's either email or call, and then we have those different call to actions, hopefully on every single page, to help them to move to action. But there's also other types of call to action, such as pop-ups. I'm sure that you've seen them. Some of you may absolutely hate them. Completely understandable, but they still work. And again, this is just one call to action. I want to use this as an example. And because there's also a great way that you can do to where it's less invasive. It's still one of my favorite call to actions, and you can actually do it to where there's a track a mouse tracking, and I use Opt-in Monster for this, and it's mouse tracking, and actually tracks your mouse to actually get you before to do the pop-up before you leave the site. So right as you leave the site, and it doesn't mess with you at all during your looking at your site, but once you leave the site. So less invasive, and there's cool stuff like that, little nuances that can help reduce the reduce any frustration, but also help optimize conversion, right? So call to action. Having a great footer in a website. I know it may sound a little trivial, but it's absolutely not. A site are systems within systems, right? So even the footer has its own best principles. For example, should you do 4 columns, 3 columns, 2, 1, you know, and should you have social icons here? Should you have social icons there? What should be in those columns, and what is the best optimization for it? So those questions definitely need to help be answered, and those, depending on your website, depending on your service and your industry. But one thing that I would absolutely suggest is with the footer, you with the footer, make sure that is up to date, because one thing that can make your site look better in just a couple seconds is at the bottom of the copyright. I can't believe how many times I've seen it. It says 2017, 2016. It says years before, sometimes 5 years before. And just updating that can make your site look, much, much better, because it looks like somebody's actually maintaining it. So, and my personal favorite for a footer for businesses is a 4-column footer with navigation, contact information, a search bar, and maybe recent posts or something like that, or additional information, or a downloadable white paper of some kind, or something like that. So just to give you guys some ideas.